When I get up to lecture them, I say, I'm going to give you the lecture I wish somebody had given me 50 years ago when I was a first-year med student. It would have changed every diagnosis I made. It would have changed every treatment plan I made. It's the food your patients are eating. Before you order another $1,000 scan, another $500 set of lab tests, stop. Ask what they ate yesterday. Have them take you through an eating day. And if it's full of burgers and buffalo wings and pepperoni pizzas, that's why they're sitting in front of you, doctor. Overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed from what they're running through their bloodstream every 4 hours.
That was Dr. Klaper, one of my favorite plant-based doctors who has inspired me for more than a decade. Dr. Klaper is a general practitioner with a zest for life, full of youthful enthusiasm, and is a picture of health at 74 years old. He is a well-recognized teacher around the world that shares evidence-based nutrition and has decades of experience reversing patients' chronic illness and disease with lifestyle, medicine, integrative medicine, and plant-based nutrition. He has done so much work helping eradicate chronic lifestyle illnesses, and now he lectures at medical schools across the country to empower the next generation of doctors to better heal their patients with plant-predominant nutrition and lifestyle changes to get to the root cause rather than treating the symptoms, all with the Moving Medicine Forward initiative. You can find him at drklaper.com, and it would be so great if you subscribe to his YouTube channel, Dr. Klaper, filled with vital information at your fingertips. I'm very proud to share his wealth of information with you all. Welcome to the Ellen Fisher Podcast. Let's get started. All right, we are on. Thank you so much, Dr. Klaper, for coming on the show today. My whole family has been looking forward to you and your wife's visit, and we are thoroughly enjoying our time here. You are just such a joy to be around, and same with your wife, Elise, as well. So thank you so much for coming here.
Oh, well, thank you, Ellen. It's always a joy to come back to Maui, and there's such special magic to be here on this property with you and your family that I'm very appreciative to be here as well.
But you've been a decades-long vegan for, 40 years now?
40 years, 1981.
That is amazing and so inspiring, and you're a pioneer in the plant-based movement. I know so many people are so thankful for all the wisdom you have to share. So yeah, just thank you again.
My honor, my pleasure.
And I gotta tell you, my mom loves you. You are her favorite plant-based doctor. Oh. And, I've been vegan for quite a long time now. Nothing that me or my sister ever did really, she's always been so supportive and loved making us vegan food, but, not plant-based herself. It wasn't until last year when she watched an interview with you that just clicked within her, and she suddenly had a spark of passion to become plant-based. Overnight became plant-based, and now she's so passionate. She tells all her friends, anyone who's experiencing symptoms of old age as they've gotten older, she's like, you gotta go plant-based, check out Dr. Klaper. And yeah, thank you. Oh. Amazing.
Well, good for her. That's great to hear.
Totally. Well, let's get into it. I wanted to first ask you if you could share a little bit about your vegan story.
Oh my. Well, it was 1980 when I grew up eating standard Western diet. My mother didn't know, your mother didn't know, who knew back then, and so I ate the standard American fare, and I was overweight and had a few health issues. And it was 1981, and I was a resident in anesthesiology at Vancouver General Hospital in Vancouver, BC. I was going to be an anesthesiologist, I thought. And day after day, I'm in the operating room, and on the cardiovascular service, you deal with people's hearts and blood vessels. So day after day, I'm putting people to sleep, and I'm watching surgeons open up their chest and open up the arteries in their heart and pull this yellow guck out of their arteries. And I knew what that stuff was. There was already some reports in the medical literature. It's largely the fat of the animals these folks are eating. One day a surgeon pulled out a particularly yellow slithery piece of atherosclerotic material, and I thought to myself, boy, that stuff looks like chicken fat. And the little voice on my shoulder said, there's a good reason why it looks like chicken fat, doctor. It is chicken fat and cow fat, and it's the remnants of these fatty cholesterol-laden meals that we're eating. And my dad died of clogged arteries. I know I've got those genes. And so I knew if I didn't change my diet, I was going to be on that operating table with that striker saw going up my sternum, and I sure didn't want that to happen. So I was getting messages from my left brain saying, adopt a plant-based diet, because there were already studies, as I said, in the literature showing you can melt this plaque away with a plant-based diet. So I was getting intellectually driven to change my diet. But what really moved me was something that spoke to my heart. A few months into my residency, I'm out dining with a friend, another anesthesia resident, and I had been striving to live a life of nonviolence. I had seen so much violence in the trauma unit at Cook County Hospital in Chicago. I really wanted to remove the violence out of my own life, at least, if I can free the world of it. And so I studied Gandhi and the Indian saints and these folks to learn how to live a life of nonviolence. And I was pontificating about such a lifestyle to my friend while polishing off a T-bone steak at the local Kagan Cleaver. And he was listening with great compassion. So that's all very nice, Michael, but if you want to really get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate, because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, you are paying for the death of this beautiful animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse. Well, as soon as he said that, all the old rationalizations sprang into my head. Well, that's what they raised them for, and the animal's dead already, and all of that. But before I could get the words out of my lips, that same little voice on my shoulder said, you know, he's right. He's right. And when I went up to pay for the steak dinner, I felt complicit in a crime, because I had done a lot of my growing up on my uncle's dairy farm in Wisconsin, and I know the reality of putting meat on the table. It's a violent act, no matter how you look at it. I chopped the heads off chickens. I saw the butcher come out and shoot the old dairy cows in the head. And there's no way to get meat on the table without causing dreadful harm and death to these beautiful animals who love their life as much as I do. And at that point, I knew my meat-eating days were over, between what I was seeing in the OR about my own arteries and knowing the greater truth of living a life of compassion. Suddenly, the plant-based style of eating became it was the only place to go. I had no choice. And so I adopted a vegan diet. Boy, my body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice, lean body every day. And at that point, I realized I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore and spend my life putting people to sleep. I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up. And so I did, much to my parents' dismay, as I left that lucrative profession behind. But I went back to general practice and found some folks who gave plant-based cooking lessons in the area. And those folks who could hear the plant-based message experienced the same wonderful changes I did. They lost weight, their high blood pressure came down, their diabetes got better. And that was 40 plus years ago, and I've been a plant-based physician ever since. And there's nothing else to do. It's the greatest joy in the world to see people get healthy, and knowing that I'm not contributing to the violence in this world. So I got a big V in my heart there. And how to go into a burger restaurant and order a hamburger and eat it's just, I'd rather flap my arms and fly to the moon. I just couldn't do that.
Right, and I think it's so interesting how you talk about how it's all encompassing. And it makes it so much more valuable and interesting when you know it's not just for your health, but also for the animals.
Yeah.
And how it's lighter on the footprint for the planet. And I think it's so interesting what you said about as soon as it was pointed out that you were, encouraging that with the steak on your plate. I think it's so true that people are all against animal cruelty. Everyone is. No one's for animal cruelty until it comes to the animals that they're eating.
Right.
And then you have all the rationale and all the reasons to say why it's okay or why you need it. And since you know through the scientific literature and your own experience as a general practitioner that you do not need to be eating animals, and actually, in fact, it'll enhance your health. That's why it's such a testament for this movement.
Yeah, there's this protein myth that's infiltrated into the awareness. You must eat animal flesh every day. No, you don't. We are basically plant-eating hominids. We've got the same basic digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have, and they're up in the trees eating leaves and fruits, and they don't develop the diseases we do. And we got fingers on our hands, not claws. We got these long intestines for digesting fiber. We've got enzymes in our saliva to digest starch. Is that not a clue about our basic nature here? And when we start eating the flesh of the mountain lion, it damages us and causes disease. And And so, yes, no, the plants are fuel, and we should eat them.
Totally. It's the win. So we know this. You've been vegan for 40 years now. I've been vegan 15 years, had 4 wonderfully healthy vegan pregnancies. All my children are thriving, our whole family vegan. But what do people need to know about plant food eating? How do you dissect and explain to someone who's new to understanding it?
Oh, well, first of all, relax. I've never had a gorilla in the office saying, Doc, I don't get enough protein. The protein are in the whole plant food. Where am I going to get my protein? It's in the grains, it's in the quinoa and the millet and the buckwheat. It's in the legumes, the beans and peas and chickpeas and lentils. All green vegetables have protein. All plant foods have protein. And so relax about the protein. And it's easy. People, well, it's expensive to eat this way. No, it's not. The staples, where you get your calories and your protein, rice and beans and potatoes are cheap. You can buy a 10-pound bag of lentils for $12, and you can eat off that for a month, along with some rice and potatoes and some starches, etc. So relax about the protein. It's not expensive. And it's a delicious way to eat. Now, once you get the calories and the protein covered from the grains and legumes, etc., then you got to get your vitamins and minerals, and those are in all the live, fresh food. That's why you want big salads and hearty vegetable soups and steamed greens, etc. And the more color, the better. And if you do that, you're basically covered. And it's a delicious cuisine. You can eat it in any ethnic and international style you want. Mexican chilies and Asian stir fries and all these wonderful variations on the flavors. And the only thing you need to do, you've got to get some vitamin B12 in. And people say, aha, well, see, it's a deficient diet. No, it's not. Well, you're not eating meat. Yeah, cows don't make vitamin B12, which you need for your brain and your spinal cord. You need some. But animals don't make it. No animal makes it. It's made by microbes in the soil. And when we were living Earth-connected lives, 1,000 years ago or more, every time we pulled a root out of the ground and ate it, there'd be microbes making B12 on the surface there. We would get our B12, the same place the deer and the antelope get it now. Where we would, when we were thirsty, we'd find a stream and plop down and drink water from the stream, and there'd be B12 in the stream water. When we were connected with the earth, B12 deficiency wasn't an issue. But now, thanks to modern sanitation, which I'm all for, the natural sources of B12 have dropped out. Nobody's drinking out of streams. Nobody's eating unwashed vegetables. And so for that reason, if you're a pure plant eater, then you need something with B12 in it, once or twice a week, either a fortified food or a little B12 drop under your tongue or something. But that should in no way deter anybody from a food plant-based diet.
Right, and even some animal farms are injecting B12 into the animals themselves these days. So you're still supplementing it. You're just like passing it through the animal first.
Yeah, really, it's secondhand B12.
Yeah.
The animal didn't make it.
Yes, totally.
Right.
So what do you have to say to someone who thinks there's this rising opinion now that saturated fat is actually good for you, that we need saturated fat?
But it's not in the volumes that we're eating. Yeah, you need a little saturated fat, and that's what avocados are for, and olives and coconuts. And have a piece of coconut, have an avocado. You get all the saturated fat that you need. But that's not an issue, and we now know that saturated fats in large amounts are pro-inflammatory. They fan inflammatory reactions throughout the body, and joints and skin and connective tissue. So no, you don't need saturated fat in the amount. If you got a T-bone steak dripping with fat, that's good for my body. No, it's not. And it contributes to inflammation in the artery walls as well. And folks who eat a lot of saturated fat are far more likely to get heart attacks and strokes. So get it out of plants. And again, gorillas by and large don't get atherosclerosis, even though they might be eating coconuts and fatty foods.
Totally. So one of my favorite lines and quotes you've ever had that I've shared multiple times on my social channels is that the human body has no more need for cow's milk than it does for dog's milk, horse's milk, or giraffe milk.
Absolutely. Somehow we got this idea that the milk of a cow is somehow beneficial for us. And I have a T-shirt outside saying cow's milk is baby calf growth fluid. That's what this stuff is, and it's full of growth factors and hormones. The cows are all pregnant nowadays, and so it's full of estrogens and progesterone and estradiol. And the more dairy a boy eats, the higher his risk of prostate cancer, because estrogens make the prostate unstable. The more dairy a young girl eats, the higher risk of precocious puberty and breast cancer. And yet we've got this idea that the milk of a cow is somehow beneficial. What's in it? Protein and calcium. Well, you get protein out of beans, get calcium out of greens. We just have no need for this any more than the milk of a giraffe. And I say, would you pour dog milk on your cereal? Would you
Totally.
pour a nice cold glass of rat milk and drink that down? We'd go, yuck. Well, what's this with these big bovines? So I haven't drunk the milk of a cow since my 20s, and I haven't missed it at all. And nowadays, there's all these wonderful plant milk, oat milk and hemp milk and almond milk and soy milk. There's just absolutely no need to pour the milk of a cow in your cereal.
What was it like growing up on a dairy farm?
Well, I spent my first 16 summers on my uncle's dairy farm in Wisconsin, and I really fell in love with cows. They're such sweet animals, but there's a sadness in the dairy barn, and I would always feel that. I never knew why. But in order for the cows to keep giving milk, people think, oh, cows in the dairy barn giving milk, that's what they do. No, they don't. There's only one reason those big bovines are lactating. They, like all other mammals, they've just had a baby. And in order to keep that milk flowing, you got to keep making those cows pregnant. They carry the calf for 9 months, just like a human mother does. They have their 65-pound baby with much labor. And then they're lactating to feed the child. But my uncle, that calf is the enemy. That calf is drinking up his profits. He wants that milk for himself to sell to the dairy. And so within 24 hours, 48 sometimes, my uncle would come and scoop that calf up and put him in the veal pen down at the end of the barn. And that mother cow would bellow. Hour after hour after hour, the most heart-rending, soul-tearing cries. Her baby is, 10 yards away in this veal pen, and she can't get to it. And I would hear it. It would haunt me. I was an 8-year-old kid, and my summers laying there, I could hear these cows bellow from my bed. And I didn't understand what was going on, but now I understand what's going on. There's such inherent cruelty in dairy production. You must be taking those calves away from the babies and from their mothers. And so with all their innocence and intentional ignorance on the part of the dairy marketers, every woman who's in the supermarket and reaches for that Greek yogurt or that cheese, and pays for it, she's saying, take another calf away from its mother. Let's make another mother suffer. And these cows would be in the stands with these big tears going down their cheeks, and pictures of it. And I couldn't understand where the sadness was, but now I know. And so that was one of the most lasting impressions that I had there. I had wonderful times on the farm. I was driving tractors when I was 8 years old and plowing fields and helping sling hay bales up on the farm, up on the hayloft, and it was a wonderful place to be. But the reality of milk and meat production, we had pigs that were shot, and cows, old dairy cows would get shot. And well, it's just the way it is, Michael, my uncle would say. But now I know it doesn't have to be that way, that whole thing. We used to harpoon whales, and now we go, oh my God, what were we thinking? Well, it should be the same thing with the dairy production. Oh, we used to raise these big bovines, and then we'd cut their throats and eat their flesh. And hopefully it'll be in those, I can't believe we used to do that category.
I hope so too. I mean, obviously, I really feel like dairy and cow's milk is the most obvious non-human food, just from a mother perspective. And I think a lot of women have made that connection through understanding that. I didn't know growing up. I thought cows just make milk just to make milk, but they make milk for their babies. And just the thought of having your baby torn away after giving birth, it's just the most horrendous thing. And there's really no other way to go about it. I think people have this false sense, this idea that if it's raw dairy or organic and pasteurized, that means they're somehow nicer to the cows, and the cows get to hang out and drink as much milk as they want.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
all those cows are destined to have their heads cut off, and the baby calves. If you're a male, unfortunate enough to be a boy calf, you're going to spend 4 months in that little veal pen chained by your neck until your flesh gets all soft and white because you're not exercising, and then the veal farmer comes and, I'll take that one, and they cut its throat and sell it for milk-fed veal. And people don't think that the veal industry, those calves getting killed, is an essential offshoot of the dairy industry. To keep that milk flowing, you're going to keep killing those calves, and then people should know they're paying for that, and there's no need for that anymore, and there never was. But certainly nowadays, there's just no need for it. It's an antique that should recede into history's dustbin.
Totally. What do you think about people who think raw milk is healthier for you and it's actually good for you if it's raw, just not pasteurized?
Well, they're kidding themselves on a number of levels. That I'm not saying, you're talking about a material at the beginning that doesn't have good nutritional value for us. There's nothing in cow's milk that we need. As I said, protein, calcium, you get that out of plants. But why do they pasteurize milk in the first place? Because cows get tuberculosis, and the pasteurization was first applied to milk to stop bovine TB, because people would drink the milk. And back in the 1920s, tuberculosis of the stomach was a common cause of death and was coming from the milk. And so that's where pasteurization really came from. And no, it's not gentle with the milk. You raise it up to 150 degrees, and I'm sure you're going to denature some proteins, etc. But and so that makes it even a little less desirable. But the substance itself, again, it's meant to fuel a baby calf, and the more dairy a woman consumes, the more estrogen she consumes, the more breast lumps she gets. They get fibroids from big uterus. They get more bleeding. They get hysterectomies. Why they would make a stand to that definitely this is good for me. No, it's not. You're not a baby calf. If they go look in the mirror, you got big ears, you got snout with whiskers. If you're a baby calf, cool. But if you're not, have oat milk, have rice milk on your cereal.
Right, because pasteurizing it doesn't take all that other stuff out.
No, the hormones are still there. The white blood cells are still there. The bacteria are still, most of them are still there. And the hormones are still there. No, there's nothing magical about raw milk, and it's a little bit more dangerous because there's more bacteria in it.
Right. So I think there's like a divide, and a lot of people, like we all know, both sides of the spectrum, whether you're pro eating animal products or pro plant-based, that processed foods aren't healthy for us. They're not good for us. But I think this other side of the spectrum is saying, well, it's the processed foods that are the problem. Don't blame the animal foods. What's really it's the processed foods. So what do you have to say to someone who's like all about the grass-fed and free range and all that, and saying that that's actually good for us?
Yeah, well, two things. First of all, they're kidding themselves on a number of levels. I totally agree with them. The more we process food, the deader and more pathogenic it gets, and the frying and the chemicals and all that stuff, evil. We agree. Food should be eaten whole as nature created them. I agree. But when people change their diets from a processed food diet with burger buns and Cheetos and all that stuff to even if they're eating meat and veggies in a clean way, they're going to feel better. They're going to lose some weight. Their bowels will work better, and absolutely, and they'll say, "Yeah, that's what I ought to be eating." But as the physician who treats chronic disease, as people are eating meat meals and animal muscle meal after meal, I have to say, what kind of microbes are you spawning in your gut? What do you follow these people along? How much colitis do they get? How much Crohn's disease do they get? What are they doing to their artery walls? They feel great for the first 6 months. 10 years from now, the doctor's recommending these, and you're going to be around when this guy in 10 years passes his first bloody stool from the colon cancer that your high meat diet spawned in his gut. Well, you won't be around. You're off to your new luxury spa appointment in Phoenix there. You won't even see it. This is drive-by medical advice. They have no idea what they're really saying and the long-term effects. You're going to be around when 15 years this lady has her stroke from that big old carotid artery plaque that your meat-based diet spawned. We'll be around to see that. But that's what happens here. We are plant-eating hominids, and a flesh-based diet violates natural law to the extent that we get these diseases. And a high-fat diet makes you insulin resistant, and so they wind up with diabetes. And bad luck. No, it's not. You're clogging up your insulin receptors with all this saturated fat. So all the way around, these folks, like Dr. McDougall says, people love to hear good news about bad habits. Anything that lets them rationalize, oh God, I want to keep eating that meat, because they like the taste of steak in their mouth. And that's really what it comes down to. But if you're talking health, you're talking about long-term longevity, you're talking about getting to your 70s. I just turned 74. I take no medications. I go for 30-mile bike rides. I just feel great. If you want to get to your advanced years without being a medical patient, or God forbid having a stroke or a heart attack, then stop kidding yourself that the food you're eating through the decades before that doesn't make a big difference. Your body's never not looking. There's no kidding your arteries. Your liver knows what you ate. Your kidneys know what you ate. And but these folks are kidding themselves because they want to keep stay in the club of the paleo folks. And I'll see them in the clinic. I'll see them in the operating room, unfortunately. And that's my fear about this, and this short-term pleasure for long-term problems.
Right. So America is riddled with chronic diseases and illness from diet and lifestyle factors mostly.
Absolutely.
Why is there so much confusion, especially and even amongst the medical community? And why is it that, someone could say, well, look at this scientific paper, it shows this, and then they'll say, well, look at this one. What is it? How do you weigh both sides? Like, I've heard that it was like for every one scientific paper showing that plant-based eating is healthy, or that meat eating is healthy, then there's 5 showing that plant-based is healthy. Like, how do you sift through it, especially as a layman?
It's gotten so muddled. It's like politics these days.
Yeah.
The same thing. And in fact, politics has found its way into the science here, and money has corrupted it as well. When the nutritional guidelines for Americans are made up by the Department of Agriculture. Okay. Why is the Agriculture Department making up the dietary guidelines? Now, lately, the food folks, the food and nutrition folks have gotten in, but they must run all their recommendations through the Agriculture Department, where the meat and dairy guys sit around the table. Oh no, you can't say that. No, can't say that. You got to have milk with every meal. You got to have meat with every meal, and so that's influence the message we're getting from government and from their scientists, and money talks. Some famous quote that it's difficult to convince a man of one viewpoint when he's getting paid to have the opposite viewpoint.
Yes.
And so you get that conflict. And then the studies are done. You can skew a study easily, have too few subjects, just pick out certain things that got better, ignoring things that got worse. There's ways to skew the presentation to say, aha, see, it's a better diet. But clearly, these diseases we're treating that clog up the emergency rooms, the operating rooms, et cetera. There are artery disease. There are diseases of obesity. There's diseases of arteries, diseases of hormones, and you didn't used to see these when we were eating largely plant-based diets. And I'm not saying we've always been vegans, but they used to eat meat once a week, twice. We couldn't afford more than that. Meat used to be expensive before the government started subsidizing the meat production. And a $2 burger is an outrageous deception. If the meat producers really had to pay for the true costs of putting that burger on the table, if they had to pay for the soil erosion, for the water that they pollute, for the water that they use, for the trees that were cut down that should be growing and absorbing carbon dioxide, if they had to pay for all of that, these burgers would cost $80 a piece, and people would eat them once a year as they should. And so money and politics and ulterior motives have skewed a lot of what we recognize as science these days. And you're right, and the dueling study, the conflicts are very unsatisfying, and I really try and stay away from that because it generates a lot more heat than light.
Right, because going to common sense, like you take the science, but also common sense and logic plays a huge role in like how I decide what I believe, because you really need both. You can't just look at the scientific papers. You got to look at the fact that cow's milk is for baby cows, stuff like that. And just the factors of like the politics, like you say, the food subsidies completely distorts reality on what food should cost. The fact that a head of broccoli costs more than a cheeseburger makes absolutely no sense at all. There's no big broccoli lobbying like there is animal agriculture lobbying. And I think a lot of people just have no clue. A lot of people don't even know that food subsidies exist and that most of them are going towards animal foods or the grain and the corn to feed the animals.
Absolutely.
And like some of it towards processed foods, but largely for the animal food. So you're right. If there was like if we had a real understanding of how much these foods should cost and if they cost the way that they should, people would be eating far less animal foods, and they have such a power within our government, and it's unfortunate, really. But like knowing all this and how it all ties in together for the planet, for how food subsidies have affected our economies and the pollution that happens within animal agriculture, from animal poop runoff, from our ocean depletion, all of that together, what do people need to know about how it ties in together with our planet?
Oh my, this is the most powerful argument that can exist, that people need to be aware of. And I would urge your viewers to get a little book by Glenn Mercer called Food is Climate. And in these few pages, he makes it very clear that we are headed for environmental disaster. As we all know, the planet is getting warmer, the ice caps are melting, the storms are getting worse, etc. Why is this happening? Well, there's all this carbon dioxide in the air, and it's coming from the auto exhaust. Let's get on electric cars, and that'll solve the problem. No, it won't. And he makes it very clear. And to Al Gore and Elon Musk and all these folks promoting these technological fixes, they're going to make this much difference. The only thing, if they're talking about taking carbon dioxide out of the air and reversing climate change, there's only one way to do it on any practical level, and it has nothing to do with big machines that suck carbon dioxide out of the air and pump it into the ground. Nature is way ahead of us. She came up with the best carbon capture device of all time. They're called trees. And we should seriously consider this. And I'm not talking about Boy Scouts out there planting trees. Let's talk some real numbers here. On planet Earth, before humans started cutting them down, there were about 6 trillion trees on planet Earth. Well, in the blink of a geological eye, in 200 years, 500 years, we've cut down over half of them. We've cut down 3 trillion. There's less than 3 trillion trees left. And when you cut down a tree and burn it, you not only release its carbon dioxide into the air, you've taken away this wonderful carbon dioxide trap, because as trees grow, they take carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it into solid wood. And all we need to do is, Mother Nature, you don't even have to plant the forest. She will, if we stop cutting them down, the trees will come back. And that's all we need to do. Where are we going to plant 3 trillion trees? On the land that they used to grow on, that you cleared to make pasture land to graze cattle, and to make these vast corn and soybean fields to feed the cows and pigs that you eat. If we would stop eating animals, not only would we be healthier, but it would free up the land for the forest to come back. And as the trees grow, they take the carbon dioxide out of the air, and climate change would reverse. And there is no other solution. It's the one that's the cheapest and easiest. Everybody could choose the bean chili instead of the beef chili. That's all we're saying. There's no great sacrifice here. But just to stop raising, we kill 80 billion animals on planet Earth every year. 80 billion cows, pigs, chickens, we kill them all. If we stop doing that and nourish ourselves on plants, that will free up this land. And only a half of it that used to grow trees needs to have the forest come back. That would take enough carbon dioxide out of the air to stop global warming. That's the only thing that's going to work at this time. And until we come to that the lights are flashing. Humans as individuals, you want to stay healthy, you want to avoid heart attacks and strokes, stop eating animals. Homo sapiens as a species, you want to keep living on this planet with a livable climate, stop eating animals. The lights are just flashing as brightly as they could be. And there's no argument. And the paleo folk, well, I would be eating meat 3 times a day. what planet are you on? Literally, what planet are you on? Not this one that's dying from our carnivory. It's our lust for animal flesh that's growing and growing by the year, that's going to cause our demise and the collapse of our society. And the vegans have been saying this for years. John Robbins has been saying this, and Diet for New America, and Francis Moore LePay, and all these folks since I got into the movement in the 80s and long before that. But I said, please read Glenn Mercer's book on food as climate. And there's another little book by Dr. Richard Oppenlander called Comfortably Unaware, which is right where the meat and dairy industries want us. Okay, read those two books and see if a hamburger looks the same to you, because that's your children's future. I see your 4 beautiful children. They're just a delight to be around. But I think, my God, when they're my age, what is this planet going to look like? And what are we doing to them? What right do we have to steal their future for cheap cheeseburgers and T-bone steaks? It's time for us to realize, and with the internet and global awareness now, the whole planet can come to this. The age of meat eating is over. We've used it up. Whatever function, the mighty hunter and all that mythology, that era is done, like whaling, it's done. Okay? Fishing, with these massive 10-mile-long nets to scoop everything out of the ocean. We've used fishing up. It's time to let the oceans heal. It's time to let the forests heal. It's time to make peace with the natural world. If we do, we'll be granted a Garden of Eden to live in. But the price of admission to that stable world is a plant-based diet. And again, what is it? Have you ever pasta primavera instead of pasta with meatballs? And have it with vegetables instead of the meat. That's the great sacrifice. Our name as a species, Homo sapiens. The word sapient is an English word from the Latin. Sapient means wise, wisdom. Okay, Homo sapient, the wise one. The one thing we're lacking is the wisdom to know that this costs too much, a flesh-based diet, and it's time for that to end. And now with all these Impossible Burgers and all that stuff, I'm not saying they're bastions of healthy food, but if it's the taste that they want, well, then eat that as a transition food. There comes a point you leave those behind too. Yeah. But if that's what you're looking for, that meaty texture to bite into, then you can even have that from plants now. So please, if you care about this planet, if you care about animals, if you care about children, if you care about your future, I've got little nephews and nieces, and I fear for them like I fear for your children. It's time for us to grow up as a species. Someone grab us up and say, listen, time to honor your anatomy and adopt a plant-based diet. And if we do that, everything will get better. The soils will stabilize, the rivers will start running clear again, the climate will stabilize, the forests will come back, and we'll be healthier. We won't have tie up our hospitals with coronary artery bypasses, et cetera, and there'll be money not spent on health care to fix the roads, put internet in everybody's house, make college free. We could do so much else than just pay for the disease that we're creating with a flesh-based diet. The wisdom, are you kidding? It's the most unwise thing to do. So, and I know vegans, they're all hippies. Please listen to the message, listen to the science, listen to the biology, listen to your heart. Would you eat raw flesh? Would you ever eat a raw steak? No, you got to cook, you got to disguise it. Doesn't that tell you? Does your mouth salivate when you see a dead carcass on the ground? No, we're plant-eating creatures. If we just honor that, everything will start to heal. And until we do, we're going to have increasingly worse problems. So this is a matter of life and future. Yeah,
you touched on so many things. I fully agree with you about we don't want to see a dead carcass. We don't want to see animals skinned and dismembered. There's nothing appetizing about it to us. That's the reason why it's not shown on social media. People don't want to see that. It's just, yes, meat's good for you, but I'm just going to disguise it, and I'm not going to show you the process of it, because it's not, no one likes to see that. And we're not going to take children to a trip to the slaughterhouse. We take them strawberry picking, and we find picking plant foods to be so much more beautiful. And I've said this multiple times before. I totally agree with you. And when it comes to, it's interesting how powerful the food subsidies really make a difference, because if we're going to subsidize anything, we should be subsidizing the plant foods that are good for us, that helps our healthcare costs. It's good for our health, and it's better for the earth. I think a lot of people don't realize that eating plants requires so much less land than if you're eating animal foods, even and especially actually if you're eating pasteurized animal foods. Like pasteurized cows, they require so much land.
More land.
So much more land. It's completely not sustainable, and especially encouraging people to eat even more of it doesn't make any sense at all. And something even as specific as like animal poop. There's just no one thinks about where does that poop go, and because the cows are such large animals and they're feeding them with so much corn and grain that they have a lot of poop, and it's got to go somewhere. It goes they take so much more poop up than the humans even. We don't even think about that, like all of that about where it's going, running off into our rivers and lakes, and there's just so many factors.
Sure, and this whole regenerative agriculture myth, again, it's another hoax to make us feel better about eating meat. But the reality is, the underlying concept is a good one to regenerate the soils. We've not been gentle with the soils, and we've just been pumping chemicals into them and sucking feed crops, feed corn and soybeans out of them. And the soils are getting depleted of their vitality. And absolutely, we need to regenerate them. And so I'm all for cover crops and crop rotations and no-till agriculture, no pesticides, herbicides. Yay, I'm all for that. But then they say, and we need to graze the animals, but we need to move them around so they don't overgraze any area. Well, wait a minute. First of all, the illusion of grass-fed beef there. They're worse for the environment than the feedlot beef. How can that be? Because they live a year or two longer. And every day those cows are belching out methane, they're breathing out carbon dioxide, they're putting manure on the ground that releases methane as it degenerates. And they do it for 2 more years than the feedlot beef do that gets their throat cut at 16 months. These animals will live for 2 to 3 years. And they require so much more land if they're just grazing that you're going to be creating you're using up more land to create more carbon dioxide and methane for what? You put a piece of steak on the table. This one's grown regeneratively, and this one's feedlot. Can you tell the difference? You're going to guarantee me that the cow that was used to be on the regenerative farm has been actually rotated around the paddocks? Can I tell that in the supermarket looking there? Stop kidding yourself. This is all an illusion to keep doing what we're doing. And I keep remembering this movie. Probably your viewers might be a little young, but there's a movie called Thelma and Louise, Susan Sarandon and somebody else. And these 2 adult women friends get on the wrong side of the law, and they wind up killing a guy or whatever, and they're fugitives. and there's nothing else to do, and the police are closing in on them. And so they look at each other. They're by the Grand Canyon, and they hold hands, and Louise hits the gas, and they just pitch out into the Grand Canyon. And that's where the movie ends there, and then the convertible as they're going into the Grand Canyon. And it seems that's what we're doing now. The governments could be doing so much more. Stop the animal subsidies, start putting ads on TV, eat plants. If you really wanted to change society, we could do it, but we're just playing Thelma and Louise, and we're going over the cliff. And how dare we do that to your children and all the kids and this beautiful planet? So these folks who are playing the regenerative agriculture game and the grass-fed game and all this stuff, they're all kidding themselves. They're eating death, and it's going to be their own, unfortunately, and the death of the planet.
Right. I think there's a lot. It's people try really hard to make it seem like it is normal and natural.
Right.
And because if you do grow up on, like you said, you grew up on a dairy farm, it did feel normal somewhat. It was hard to understand. As a child, we listen to our parents. We understand the world in the best we know how based on growing up, or if we're raised to think that hunting is fine, and I'm actually not disgusted by an animal being dismembered. And that's really comes from just conditioning and being used to seeing something over and over again, which happens in all different kinds of experiences in people's lives. But that doesn't, if you really get down to the heart of it, we know that we teach children to be kind to animals. And in fact, if a child isn't is showing tendencies to not be kind to animals, we kind of consider that a concern. Because we
Absolutely.
want you to be kind. Oh, be gentle to the cat. Don't hurt the kitty's tail, But here, have some eggs, have some raw milk and meat and all that stuff. I think it's just there's a disconnect, and it's easy because we're so disconnected from the way the world
Absolutely.
used to be, for sure.
Absolutely.
So what about the farmers? What do they do if more and more people start eating plants and there's like this natural demand and shift towards plant foods? What do the animal farmers do?
Oh, thank you for that. That's so important. And it's easy if you're a dairy farmer or a beef farmer to get your back up when you hear that they're going to throw me off my land, you're going to take away my livelihood. No, not at all, sir or madam. These folks are not the enemy. They're our brothers and sisters, and they're growing our food for us. Help these people. Then all you have to see is you don't have to run cattle and do something else with the land. Grow fruit trees, grow broccoli, grow industrial hemp. If the land, well, my land's all rocky, etc. If it can grow grass enough for cattle to graze on, that it can grow industrial hemp, it can grow a whole lot of crops. And pay these folks, make it easy for them. Build a couple less aircraft carriers or close a couple military bases and take those billions of dollars and set up the Agricultural Fairness Administration and help these people, send them to night school to learn how to grow new crops, buy their seeds for them, buy their equipment for them, give them crop insurance, pay the mortgage on their house for 10 years, give their kids scholarships to college, make it easier for them to make the transition. Don't grind them up in the gears of economics here. Help them. They're growing our food. And just say, yeah, my daddy grew cattle since 1892 on this land. Well, we used to harpoon whales too, but that doesn't mean you still have to do that. We're bright creatures here. Do something else with that land. Pay them to watch the forest. Pay them to be good foresters and promote clean up the streams and nourish the land. There's so much else we could do. These folks are not the enemy. They're to be helped. And we could do it. Well, what is it? Money and political will is all that it takes. And so we need to retool, revision the entire issue of food production and change it to swerve it over to the plant-based side and bring these people along.
That even goes for, like even the farmers growing corn and soy for the animal.
Right. Grow it
Animals.
for people. Grow people crops. Absolutely.
Because a lot of people think that the soy, soy's bad for the plant, but most of it's going towards the
It's
animal
going
foods.
down to gullets of cows and pigs and chickens. Very little of it winds up in tofu and soy burgers. I'll tell you, they're growing animal fodder. They're growing cheeseburgers.
Right, so let's shift a little bit. I want
Sure.
to talk about your Moving Medicine Forward initiative and what you've been doing now. It's very exciting, and I feel like it's such shows me a bright future. What you're doing right now with your next chapter, educating doctors for the next generations. Can you just tell us about it?
Absolutely. Well, as a physician who spent my first 30 years in practice treating diabetes and high blood pressure and clogged arteries and obesity, etc., the penny dropped that this is from what they're eating, of course. And I look at my colleagues in the various specialties, the cardiologists, they're focused on, he needs statins, he needs stents. But all this is coming from what we're eating, by and large, 90% of this. And I'm embarrassed as a physician. I'm embarrassed for my profession that we can, our science is so powerful. We can pick out a genetic mismatch on gene A21 on chromosome 14. Boy, we can home in on that with precision. But the thought that our patients eating cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas might be clogging up their arteries, this is somehow too abstruse a concept. Do we have proof of this? Show me 20 double-blind placebo-controlled studies that show me that eating broccoli is healthier than cheeseburgers. You don't have those studies? See them, go away till you do. And people love, and there's an inertia and that keeps this ignorance going, and it's ignorance. And the young docs, at this point, somebody, when I get up to lecture them, I say, I'm going to give you the lecture I wish somebody had given me 50 years ago when I was a first-year med student. It would have changed every diagnosis I made. It would have changed every treatment plan I made. It's the food your patients are eating. Before you order another $1,000 scan, another $500 set of lab tests, stop. Ask what they ate yesterday. Have them take you through an eating day. And if it's full of burgers and buffalo wings and pepperoni pizzas, that's why they're sitting in front of you, doctor. overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, clogged up and inflamed from what they're running through their bloodstream every 4 hours. And if you change that, it's stunning. Get them on a plant-based, send the patient to the plant-based dietitian, let her do the counseling, let her show them the movies, let her take them shopping. You see them back in a month. And if they've gone plant-based, you'll see they're leaner and their blood pressure's down and they are healthier folks. This is how medicine should be practiced in the 21st century. And in my slide presentation, I put a pretty provocative slide up saying, knowing that how reversible, because these diseases are reversible, it's this most exciting thing in medicine to see the obesity melt away and the arteries relax and the high blood pressure go down, the joints stop hurting and the psoriatic skin clears up and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing and the migraine headaches get better and they turn into normal healthy people right in front of your eyes that don't need a bunch of pills and potions and procedures. I say, the slide says, you want to heal these people or don't you? I mean, really, why are you going to medicine? You want to heal them? Or are you just going to be there, see them every month to raise their dose of metformin and beta blockers and say, come back in 2 months? If that's how you're going to practice medicine, you're going to leave medicine. You'll burn out. This is the most dismal kind of medicine, hopeless medicine. Because you're telling your patients you'll never get well. You're always going to be diabetic. You're always going to have hypertension. You're always going to be sick. What a hopeless message. You want to heal these people? Then get real about what they're eating. And so I show them a slideshow, and I show them how a plant-based diet reverses diabetes, how it cleans out arteries, how it settles down inflamed colons, how it clears up psoriasis, etc. And there's more than just going plant-based, but it's square one. You want to heal these people, then get them on a plant-based diet. And as I said, I wish someone had told me that. So I've been going around to the nation's medical schools through North America, Canada, Mexico, and Australia, New Zealand. I'm going to be in December, I'm lecturing over at Burns Medical School in Honolulu and giving this message. And it's getting easier because it is the 21st century. And when I step up to the microphone, and I've got a bunch of med students there, I know that in every medical school class, every first, second, third year med school class, there's 20 or 30 students. They've seen movies like Forks Over Knives. They've seen Cowspiracy. They've seen What the Hell, The Lights On. And they're ahead of me here a little bit. And it's wonderful. And they're very receptive to the message. And they say, I wish my professors were telling me this. So our Moving Medicine Forward initiative is to get me in front of as many medical school audiences as possible, to turn on as many lights in these heads, because they say once you look behind the curtain, you can't pretend you don't know what's behind the curtain. And I'm trying to rip the curtain down. It's the food. It's what your patients are eating. Start there. The students want to hear this. They know that they sincerely want to get their patients healthier. And many of them, again, are not only open to the plant-based message, many of them are vegan now themselves. They're getting more and more of those. And if any of your listeners would like to see what it is I'm actually telling the students, go to my website, drklaper.com, and click on Moving Medicine Forward, and see my video called What I Wish I Learned in Medical School About Nutrition. And that's what I tell the students. And at the end, I say, now you know what I wish I had learned in medical school about nutrition, and now you know it as well. And the students are getting more and more excited. I'm getting more and more invitations. I'm doing more of it electronically now. I gave this talk at the University of Buffalo last week, at Yale. I gave it at University of California, San Diego 2 weeks ago. And I'm able to drop into these various medical audiences from afar. And it was discouraging not to be able, due to COVID, to actually be in front of these students, because you get such great energy from the live audience. But it's kind of a silver lining from the COVID virus that I'm able to reach so many more students now and visit so many more medical schools from my own living room by the magic of electronic medium. So this is Moving Medicine Forward. We could sure use some help. This costs money to,
how do we support it?
To pay staff, etc. And if people would like to make a tax-deductible donation, again, go to drklaper.com, click on Moving Medicine Forward, and you'll see how you can make a donation there. We'd be very appreciative for any help.
Perfect. That's really helpful to share that information. And I'll definitely be putting the link to his website below for you to check out so you can look into that. So, okay, why is it that medical schools don't teach this stuff? That don't why do they not learn anything, little to nothing about nutrition?
It's embarrassing. And again, I could be a little cynical in the fine hand of the pharmaceutical industry. They don't want to see people getting really, really healthy. They're going to sell a lot less drugs, and they have a big influence about the curriculum. And I gave a talk that at the University of Washington, Seattle, and a surgeon came down afterwards and said, good talk, Doc, glad to hear this, but until they start asking about nutrition on the national board exams, we're not going to be teaching this. And he's right. And so we went to the National Board of Medical Examiners and said, what will it take for you folks to ask about nutrition on the boards? And he said, well, we don't know anything about it. So I said, you bring us the questions. So I'm a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and there's a committee now making up 1,000 questions on diet and lifestyle to bring to the national board folks, and they're going to start putting them on the exams, and that's going to start turning the wheel there. And again, the doctors are, they've got this image that if those smart scientists in the lab come up with a mesocillin, it's just a matter of time before we can come up with a magic pill and restore health. And they're kidding themselves. It's lazy medicine. You got to get down to the cause of disease, and that's how we're eating and how we're living our lives. So it's, you can tell the pioneer from all the arrows in the back there, and so we're still in that stage. But there's nothing else for me to do at this stage in my career except help the young medical students awaken. So I want to create a new generation of nutritionally aware doctors and dentists and pharmacists and podiatrists and nurses and physical therapists and occupational therapists, all the health professions. Once a month, we have our plant-based clinical nutrition forum, and people are welcome to join. Every month, I have a new guest on from the healing professions, and we talk about how plant-based nutrition plays a role in whatever healing discipline they are in. And so it's an exciting time to see these powerful modalities, plant-based nutrition, that be incorporated into people's actual lives and their medical practices. So we want to help that happen as much as possible. And the 100th monkey phenomenon, that when the 100th monkey learns a new behavior, all the monkeys learn, start acting in that way. Right. And so I think we're about monkey number 82 or so. So we're getting there, but I still got a bunch more monkeys to convert yet.
Making progress for sure. You're doing so much. It's amazing how much in your last decades that you've done, and now this, which seems so impactful. It's really going to make a change, as opposed to just like one-on-one talking to a doctor here and there, being the good example. You're actually speaking to doctors. And how do they continue to learn after your lecture?
Absolutely. The last third of my slideshow is filled with all the resources that are available to them. And I say, go to these websites, go to PCRM, Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine. The University of Winchester in the UK has a 6-week course on plant-based nutrition. Take that course online. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine has a rich library of continuing medical education courses. It's free for the taking. There's so much. And now there's an organization called the Plantation Project, which encourages plant-based nutrition-based physicians to collaborate. And they have, until COVID came along, our annual meeting, we had 2,000 doctors from around the world, from England and Ireland and India and Malaysia and Argentina. They would come, and the plant-based light is on in all these doctors' heads and hearts. And to see them excitedly talk about this, it fans this wonderful flame that's starting to get brighter and brighter. So I tell the doctors, you're not alone. This is not woo-woo California stuff. This is solid science, and there's a lot of clinicians. There's plant-based cardiologists or plant-based pathologists, plant-based radiologists, name it. It's the lights going on in all these physicians' heads. So come and join the party. Get on board, because it's going to take you to good places. You'll see your patients get healthy, and that's why you went into the healing professions to begin with. Isn't it, doctor? Isn't it, nurse? And so it's an exciting time, but there's a lot of darkness to push away. But it's better to light a candle than to
Right.
curse the darkness. So
Right.
we're trying to light a lot of candles.
That's amazing, because I do think a lot of people have poor experiences with doctors.
Oh.
It could be just a pill for every ill
Oh.
and not really getting to the root cause and how can I
Exactly.
change things. But I do have hope that it will change, as much as it's hard because there is so much corruption within our, what they're taught in medical school to the food subsidies and to all the government corruption that there is, unfortunately. I do see hope with the type of things that you're doing to help change it, and maybe in the future, just maybe, we'll be prescribing more like diet and lifestyle
Yes.
factors than we will as many
Absolutely.
pills.
In my lecture, I say you at least owe your patient a 4-page handout. Yeah, you want to reverse your diabetes, you want to reverse your high blood pressure. Here, go to these websites, see this video, read this article, and then call Ms. Smith, the plant-based dietitian. Go see her, and then you come back and see me. And by the way, what did you eat yesterday? How beautiful to have a physician say those words to
Yeah,
you
yeah.
at your visit. So that's what we're trying to create, a generation of doctors
Yeah.
who have that awareness, and we're getting there.
Because it puts the control back into you. You don't feel so helpless. Because you
Absolutely.
know, oh, I can actually help this. I'm not just going to manage my type 2 diabetes the rest of my life. I could potentially reverse this.
Absolutely.
That's powerful information for sure.
Absolutely.
So lastly, let's talk about this other thing that you're doing, which is
Yes.
also amazing, which is your plant-based telehealth. Can you explain what that is? and what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, I'm still a practicing physician, and I love working with patients. But due to COVID and also just the reality of Western medicine these days, we've gone online. And so now I do telemedicine exclusively. And our organization is called plant-based-telehealth.com. And if people would like to have a consultation with me personally, I'd love to hear from you. And so go to plant-based-telehealth.com. I'm sure you'll see it down below here. And we've got 9 physicians. They're all plant-based, and they're all excellent clinicians. And if you can't get an appointment with me, take one of our other physicians, depending what state you live in. And it's one of the most exciting, fulfilling kinds of medicine. I never thought I would enjoy electronic medicine, but you can tell a lot from just looking at the patient and hearing them, listening and asking questions. And we can prescribe lab tests and prescribe medications, and we practice medicine.
Yeah.
But it's plantbasedtelehealth.com, and I would love to hear from your viewers and take them on as patients.
Yeah, because that is super cool, not only but also empowering, because I think a lot of people, they might feel really alone. They're learning about all this information, like, oh, that doctor, he's so far away. How will I get this information? How can I get one-on-one help? But now with the telehealth, makes it possible.
Absolutely.
So special. Okay, so I have one more question for you.
Sure.
My mom wanted me to ask you.
Okay.
She said, first of all, she's listened to all your interviews. She sees your passion. She just so loves to hear from you and loves everything that you have to say. And she wants to know what keeps you going and motivated and not giving up out of frustration.
Oh my. My love for life and love for the natural world. And the Buddhists have a concept of the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva, what does he do? You relieve suffering wherever you find it. And as a physician, that's my calling. I relieve suffering wherever I find it. And it's just in my heart and spirit, whether it's an injured animal or a crying child, whatever it is, that impulse that makes you want to just scoop them up and take care of them and comfort them. That's what I want to do to the whole planet and to everybody I see and to the animals. It's that desire to protect and to heal on big levels and small levels. It's in my heart, and every morning it's there and brighter and stronger. So that's what gets me out of bed and puts me back to sleep at night with a smile on my face.
That's so beautiful. I mean, it really has, that to me, that screams purpose, which is part of the Blue Zones, one of the nine lifestyle factors that
Right.
Purpose. And I can 100% agree with you on that. It really is super fulfilling, following your passions and your purpose, and hopefully leaving this place better than it was when you got here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I owe it to your children.
Aw,
I'm working for the kids and the animals.
I mean, it's partly to you from all that I've learned from doctors like you, so that I have such healthy, vibrant children. So thank you.
Beautiful. You are
Aw,
so welcome. Thank you.
This made me so happy.
I salute you.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I could not be more elated, and I'm so thankful whoever's listening got to hear you speak and share all of your knowledge. So I guess we'll end it.
Well, fair enough.
This was amazing.
Or we'll continue on.
Yes.
As
Thank you.
making a healthier world.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Klaper.
Thank you, Ellen.